At 1:12 a.m., the man on the other side of the glass smiled and promised to kill me, and I still don't know why he chose that night. I wish I could say this happened somewhere remote or dangerous, but it didn't. It happened at a quiet little hotel in my hometown, one I used to work at, and one I refuse to go near now. A few months earlier, our town had been hit hard by a hurricane. Whole neighborhoods were damaged, people moved away, and everything felt hollow afterward. The hotel stayed busy for a short while with displaced families, but by the time this happened, it was almost empty. Some nights, fewer than 10 rooms were occupied. I worked the night shift. From 6 p.m. until 2 a.m. After that, someone else would come in until morning. Most nights were painfully quiet. Sometimes I wouldn't see a single guest for hours. There was a small employee break room in the back with a couch, a table, a fridge, and the staff bathroom. That's where I spent most of my shifts. If a guest needed anything, they'd ring the bell at the front desk. That night I was sitting in the back when I heard a deep voice echo from the lobby. "Hello." It wasn't shouted, just calm, repeated, over and over. I walked out to the desk and saw a man standing on the other side of the glass barrier. The desk had a thick glass wall with a narrow opening at the bottom, just wide enough to slide things through. He said he needed towels. Nothing strange about that. I grabbed a couple and slid them under the glass. He snatched them faster than necessary, locked eyes with me for a second too long, then turned and walked down the hallway. I stayed at the desk and watched the security monitor. He didn't walk normally. He kept looking over his shoulder. Then, on camera, I watched him lift the towels and rub them slowly across his face, like he was savoring the texture. I muttered, "What the hell?" Then he stepped into the elevator. I went back to the break room trying to shake it off. About 10 minutes later, I heard the same voice again. "Hello." I walked back out and my stomach dropped. He was back at the desk. This time he said loudly, "My key card doesn't work." I asked for his room number. He said something like 2C. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. Our rooms didn't have letters. Never had. I said carefully, "Sir, our rooms are numbers only. Are you sure you're staying here?" He didn't answer. Instead, he threw the towels onto the floor. Then he smiled. Slowly, he tilted his head and stepped closer to the glass. When his face was inches from mine, he said, softly at first, "I'm going to kill you." Then he said it again, louder, and again. Each time louder than the last until he was almost screaming it, grinning the whole time. I yelled that I was calling the police and grabbed the phone. I made sure he could see me dialing 911. That's when he started mocking me, repeating, "calling the police," in a sing-song voice while I explained to the dispatcher that a man was threatening me through the glass. He laughed. Then casually, like he wasn't in a hurry at all, he turned and walked toward the front doors. I told the dispatcher he was leaving. When he stepped outside and disappeared, she asked if I still wanted officers sent out. I said no. I don't know why. Fear, shock, denial. I just wanted the night to end. The rest of my shift crawled by. I didn't leave the lobby again. One guest checked in near the end of my shift. My replacement arrived and I clocked out. I walked home in silence, replaying his smile over and over in my head. And even now, years later, the part that still keeps me awake is this. He never told me his room number, because I don't think he ever had one. And what scares me most is realizing how close I came to being completely alone with him, without that glass between us. I thought the worst part was over when I left the hotel. I was wrong. I stepped out into the parking lot and the cold hit me instantly. I remember thinking, stupidly, that I should have grabbed my coat. I shoved my hands into the pockets of my thin jacket and pulled my hood up as I started walking. That's when I heard a voice. It came from the bushes lining the hotel windows. I couldn't make out the words, and honestly, I didn't want to. My instincts kicked in hard. I sped up. I crossed onto the main road, empty, silent, not a single car in sight, then turned left onto the residential street that led toward my house. The quiet was suffocating. No traffic, no wind, just my shoes tapping against the pavement. Then I heard something else. Footsteps behind me, fast, careful, almost tiptoeing like whoever it was didn't want to be heard. I spun around. The sound stopped. There was a parked car a few feet back, and before I even saw anyone I knew, then I heard it, soft laughter, and that same voice, low and calm. "I'm going to kill you." I didn't need to see his face to know it was him. I scanned the street, heart pounding. I couldn't outrun him, not in my work shoes. That's when I saw it, a house with an upstairs light still on. Someone was awake. That was my only chance. I glanced back and saw him slowly leaning out from behind the car, inch by inch, until his face was fully visible. Eyes locked on me, that same sick smile stretched across his face. I ran. I screamed for help as loud as I could and slammed my finger into the doorbell over and over. That's when he grabbed me. His hands closed around my throat, crushing my airway as he leaned in and whispered, "Die." I truly thought that was it. Everything went narrow, dark around the edges. Then the front door flew open. A man inside shouted, "Hey!" The grip vanished. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. I never turned around to see the man run. I didn't want to know which direction he went. The homeowner helped me inside, gave me water, and called the police. I told them everything. They pulled the hotel's security footage and said they'd start looking for him immediately. Later, I was brought in for a lineup. 5 men stood in front of me, same height, similar builds. I stared at them for what felt like forever, and then I said no. None of them felt right. To this day, I don't know if fear clouded my judgment or if he simply wasn't there. And that's what still haunts me. Somewhere out there is a man who smiled when he said he'd kill me, and I don't know if he ever stopped. If I hadn't lied in that moment, I'm convinced someone would have gotten hurt, maybe worse. And I still don't know what that guy planned to do next. I work closing shifts in the pro desk at a big home improvement store. Most nights it's just me and another cashier. I'll call her Emily. She's one of the nicest people I know. Quiet, soft-spoken, and honestly stunning, which unfortunately means contractors hit on her constantly. Most of the time it's harmless. A compliment here, a bold dinner invite there. She always turns them down politely. Emily has a girlfriend, but she doesn't like advertising that to strangers. She says it's no one's business, even though the attention clearly makes her uncomfortable. We've gotten close over time. When you're stuck closing together, you either bond or go insane. We cover each other's breaks, talk about life, the usual stuff. So when I came back from lunch one night and she told me about a guy who'd been extra pushy, I paid attention. She said she'd turned him down, told him she was already seeing someone. He didn't take it well, but eventually walked off. We laughed it off as just another guy who couldn't handle rejection. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Later that night, the same guy came back. Emily was helping a customer in lumber, so it was just me at the desk. He looked normal, clean-cut, confident, the kind of guy who probably gets told yes a lot. But something about him felt wrong, too focused, too tense. I asked if he needed help. "I'm here to see Emily," he said. I asked how he knew her. Without hesitation, he told me she'd agreed to go out with him earlier and that he'd come back to pick her up. That was a lie, and not even a good one. I told him she'd already left for the day, a standard cover we all use. His smile vanished instantly. He crossed his arms and said he just wanted to talk to her again. Ask her out properly this time. That contradicted his story completely. I told him that wasn't going to happen. He stared at me and said, "Why not?" My brain froze. I didn't want to out Emily. She trusted me. So the first thing that came out of my mouth was the only shield I could think of. She's my fiancée. The confusion on his face twisted into something darker. He looked me up and down and asked how someone like her would ever be with someone like me. I told him we were getting married in a few months and that he needed to back off. He didn't argue, he just stared at me, long, cold, like he was memorizing my face. Then he walked away. I remember thinking I'd handled it, that the lie worked. But the way he looked at me as he left made my stomach drop, because it didn't feel over. It felt like I'd just become part of whatever he was planning next. And that was the last calm moment we'd have that night. I thought the lie scared him off. I was wrong, because 2 weeks later he came back looking ready to kill. When Emily got back from lumber, I told her everything. The moment I described him, her face dropped. Same guy. No doubt about it. She was shaken, but also laughed a little at the fiancé excuse. She even joked she'd rather be engaged to me than spend 5 minutes alone with him. I took that as a compliment and tried not to think about it too hard. A couple of weeks passed. Nothing happened. We stopped talking about him. Life went back to normal, until one night, long after dark. Emily and I were taking out the trash so we could shut the registers down and head home. The store was quiet, too quiet. Then bang, something slammed into the front doors so hard we both jumped. It was him. His face was pressed flat against the glass, eyes wide, unblinking. There was something feral about the way he looked at us. "We're closed," I shouted. He didn't care. Emily yelled that she wasn't interested, that he needed to leave her alone. That's when he screamed back that he wasn't there for her. He was there for me. He said word for word that if he could take out her husband, she'd be his. In that moment, I knew he wasn't bluffing. I told Emily to run to the manager's office and call the police while I stayed put and kept eyes on him. I was terrified. The doors were the only thing between us, and company policy meant I didn't even have pepper spray. Then he started charging the doors, over and over. The glass rattled so hard I was sure it was going to shatter. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. That's when Emily came sprinting back, holding a 2X4, yelling that the cops were on their way. That finally did it. The guy backed off and disappeared into the dark. The police arrived minutes later. The closing manager pulled the footage. Thankfully, they found him and arrested him not long after, but the damage was already done. Neither of us felt safe there again. We both quit. We're still close friends, still in school together, but we work different jobs now. I try not to think about what could have happened if the doors had given way, or if Emily had been alone that night. She tells me she was glad I was there, that having someone step in gave her time to get help. For me, it was a brutal wake-up call. For some people, no isn't the end of the conversation, it's the trigger. At 1:07 a.m., I realized I was completely alone behind a glass door, and the man on the other side was convinced I was trapping him. I wish I could say I handled it bravely, but the truth is, I was terrified, and I learned a lesson that night I'll never forget. This happened a little over 2 years ago, back when I just started working the overnight shift at a small roadside motel in the US. It was 2016, and I was desperate for an office job, any job. So when my friend Mike helped me get hired, I didn't ask many questions. The pay was bad. The hours were worse. 11 o'clock p.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. just me, a computer, and a lobby wrapped in glass. Training was rushed. The owner and his wife left town for a week, so I got a few mornings of basics and 2 overnight shifts shadowing Mike. Then, just like that, it was my first night completely alone. No security window, no locked night hatch, just a glass door, floor-to-ceiling windows, and security monitors that showed the parking lot and stairwells. Around 1 o'clock a.m., a man walked in asking if we had rooms available. Normally, if someone gives off a bad vibe, management wants us to say we're full. but at first glance he seemed fine. Tired maybe, normal enough. So I checked him in. While I was typing, I noticed something strange. He kept swatting the air and making spitting sounds, like he thought bugs were flying around his face. I ignored it. I just wanted him gone and in his room. I handed him the key. He left. A few minutes later, bang. His hand slammed against the glass door so hard I jumped out of my chair. He stood there staring at me, eyes locked on mine. Then he cracked the door open and pushed his head inside. "Why won't you let me into my room?" he demanded. "I can't get in. Why are you doing this to me?" My instinct was to stay calm, helpful. I told him maybe the key malfunctioned and made him a new one. But the look in his eyes when I handed it over, I can't explain it. It felt like danger. He left again. I texted Mike. No answer. It was the middle of the night. Then I saw him coming back down the stairs on the security monitor. That's when panic took over. I ran into the back office, locked the door, and pulled out the small pocket knife I kept with me. I could hear him in the lobby now, yelling into the empty space. "Hello, why won't you let me in? Do you not like me?" And as I stood there shaking behind a locked door, one thought kept repeating in my head. What if he doesn't stop at the glass next time? I should have called the police right then. Instead, I unlocked the door and heard him whisper the words that still haunt me. I did something incredibly stupid that night. Instead of calling 911 the moment fear hit me, I convinced myself I could handle it alone. From behind the locked office door, I called out, trying to sound calm. "I'm just on the phone. I'll be right out." That was a lie. I kept calling Mike over and over, straight to voicemail. No help was coming. After a few shaky breaths, I unlocked the door and stepped back into the lobby. He wasn't there. Then I heard him. He was in the bathroom, muttering to himself. His voice was low, angry, broken. And then, clear as day, I heard him say, "Kill her, kill her." My heart dropped into my stomach. And still, I didn't call the police. When he came out, I forced myself to smile and said, "I'm sorry, your key was broken. I'll walk you to your room." He agreed. I had my pocket knife clenched in my hand, hidden under the sleeve of my sweater. My arm was shaking, but I kept it down at my side. He insisted on walking behind me as we went outside. Every step felt like it might be my last. We climbed the stairs. I kept glancing back, watching his hands, his face, waiting for him to lunge. Then he stopped, at the wrong door. He started trying to open it. I forced a calm laugh and said, "Oh, sorry, that's not your room. Yours is right here." Only later did I realize how close I came to something far worse. That room belonged to another guest, a woman staying alone. I got him into the correct room and ran back to the office, slammed the door and locked it. My whole body was shaking. Not long after, the next guest checked in. He was a police officer. I felt embarrassed admitting what had happened, but he listened and said he'd keep an eye out. The next night, the man came back. This time, the doors were locked. I told him we were fully booked and didn't let him inside. When my boss returned from vacation, I told him everything. He didn't take it seriously. I stayed at that job another year. A lot of strange things happened, but nothing ever came as close as that night. I still think about how easily this could have ended differently, and how trusting my instincts sooner might have saved me months of fear. If this story gave you chills, like, subscribe and share it, especially with anyone who works alone at night. Trust your instincts, call for help early, and never assume you can handle it yourself.